Okay, professors, over to you. The first question.
Should we introduce ourselves first?
Yeah,
Yes,
can we
please.
introduce
Yes.
ourselves?
Sure, of course, of course, of course.
Hi all. I'm Dr. Thang Leng. I am the head of the Department of Japanese Studies. I am an alumni from this department long time ago, and I'm anthropologist by training. So I teach courses mostly on Japanese society and culture related. With me today is our popular culture specialist, very sought after. Her modules are always very hotly sought after by students, Professor Deborah Shamoon. So I am going to, we're going to split up our work. So in that sense, Professor Deborah Shamoon will address first the questions for the first half of the session, but of course I will come in anytime if there's a need to, and then I will try to address all your questions in the second half, but we both will be here, so don't worry. Yes,
Okay.
Deborah, over to you.
Great, thanks very much. So yes, absolutely, you'll have the opportunity to study in Japan if you major in Japanese studies. Almost all of our majors do go to Japan at some point, and many of them go multiple times. So there is the student exchange program that is run by NUS, and you apply through that program to go to Japan. And we have many universities that we have partnerships with in Japan. So you pay your usual tuition fees or school fees here, and then you're enrolled for 1 or 2 semesters at a Japanese university. And the modular credits, the MCs, transfer back here. Most students go in their 2nd or 3rd year. It depends on what kind of program you're following and if you plan to do a 4th honors year or not. The exact universities that we have partnerships with tend to change from year to year, but we do have ongoing partnerships with major universities in Japan, including Waseda, Keio, and also regional universities like Akita and Tohoku University and Ritsumeikan in Kyoto, Osaka University. So our students go to all of those places. There are also additional opportunities that are just for Japanese studies majors. Those include short-term trips during the winter and summer breaks. There are also some internship opportunities, and there's some field studies modules. So you enroll in a module at NUS that takes place during the special term in December or June, and you take a week or so of classes here at NUS and then go to Japan with your NUS instructor. Should I say more about SEP?
Yeah, if you are the specialist on SEP.
So in terms of which university you want to go to, you have your choice. If you go to the FASS website, it will list all of the current universities. And when you apply, you make a list of 5 universities that you would be willing to be placed at. But there is preferential placement at some universities for Japanese studies majors. So anyone can participate in the SEP program and go to any university around the world, including in Japan. But we try to have special placement for Japanese studies majors to make sure that everyone who is majoring, who wants to go to Japan, has the opportunity to do so. And we also have scholarships in the department that are only for Japanese studies majors that can help out financially if you want to go abroad.
Maybe I will ask you the next questions on the prospects of doing PhD in Japanese studies.
Sure.
Okay, so we do have students who graduated from our PhD studies, but very few so far. We have most of them until now, most of them are from overseas. So they go back to their own country, or some of them go to Japan, and majority of them become academics so far. But I think having a PhD doesn't mean that you have to go into academics. If you know, there are also a lot of opportunities, for example, going into research, doing more research in organizations or in companies as well. So if you are, I mean, I don't know if you are newly graduate for, I mean, you're coming in as a first year for undergrad, or if you are thinking about, you have finished your master's and thinking about doing a PhD, the first thing we would encourage you to do if you want to pursue a PhD is to talk to the professors in our department that you think you are interested in pursuing a PhD with, because you will need to have a professor that whose expertise is what you're interested in. Deborah, you want to take this one or you want me to do it? JS1101E and GK1002.
Go ahead.
Yeah, they are the same course. Yeah, just that the module code is different. Yes, because in GK, it means that it's a general education. It's under the general education basket. Right. So if you are taking it under JS1101E, you fulfill your Asian Studies basket. So it depends on what you want to use that module for. You can register it under that different module code respectively. Okay, Deborah, you want to do the next one on what is it? Expertise to Japan and employers.
Yeah, and so it looks like we kind of got the same question twice. Are you limiting your job prospects by focusing only on Japanese studies? I don't think that this is something that you need to worry about. You would be pursuing different types of expertise if you do a Japanese studies major versus doing, say, a general Asian studies minor, or a different type of academic path. So the big advantage of pursuing the Japanese studies major is that you gain the hard skill of expertise in Japanese language plus cultural knowledge. If you do a more general kind of degree, or if you do the minor in Japanese studies, you won't have that same hard skill of real fluency in Japanese language. And that is very attractive to a lot of employers, both based in Singapore and Japanese companies who are overseas or in Japan itself. So although you are following a more narrow track, you are gaining tremendous expertise that you don't get by following a different type of major.
Yeah, also I think a lot Japanese companies do really venture out of Japan. There are a lot of Japanese MNCs around, a lot of Japanese companies that are having branch companies in Chinese or Indian market and so forth as well. So you will still have opportunities to work with some companies, or relating yourself to Japanese companies, even if you are working in a Singapore company or other kinds of companies. And also bear in mind that in NUS majors, you have to fulfill 160 modular credits for a 4-year programs. And for majors, if you are a second major, you only take out to 44 MCs, only 11 modules for you to be declared as a second major in Japanese studies, for example. And you can always think of other things to do to complement the second to complement Japanese studies with your other majors that you have. So our students have been interested in economics, for example, and also Japanese studies. Then they will do a first major, second major. So you can be a first or second major for either of the departments, either of the disciplines. Or there are even people who like Chinese and Japanese, then they do Chinese and Japanese studies as well. So bear in mind that it is very flexible, And you can always start your year one thinking that I want to do something, and then you can always change your major after that. So you don't have to worry and think that you must decide on what major you want to do from the year, from your first semester in NUS.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a fact that your undergraduate career is not that long, and so you don't have that much time to gain expertise in many topics. So it's up to you to decide what's more important to you, to really have in-depth expertise in one topic, in one region, or to have more generalized but less deep expertise or less deep knowledge of many different areas at the same time. Okay, should we move on to the next question?
Yeah. Suggestion for internship companies? Well, there are different ways for students to get internship. You can either, for example, we have very short-term internships that students can go to in Hiroshima. So every year we do have students going to Hiroshima for internship in different kind of companies like banks, printing companies, hotels, and so forth. So there are quite a few companies that are accepting our students on a special arrangement basis, but that's a very short internship for you to experience life in Japan. But if you can also, in fact, go and look for your own internship, and then you come back and tell us if you want to have that internship for your modular credits as well. So I mean, just a while ago, we were talking about internship with, for example, Scantic. It's a local Singapore company. They're opening, they have stores in Japan, and they would like to have this possibility of interns from Japanese studies, students who know about Japan culture, who knows Japanese language. So there are internships that can come by sometimes. And over the years, our students did go for internship in, for example, Japan Culture Center, or in some banks as well when there's opportunities. So once you join us, of course, we can explore together what are some of the possibilities for you.
Yeah, and Amy added as a note along the side, of course, travel to Japan right now is limited due to the pandemic situation. So we have to wait and see how that develops. But hopefully by the time students incoming this year are in their second or third years, then the travel restrictions will have lifted. Okay, so this next question, do I have to be proficient in Japanese if I major in Japanese studies? And is it possible to major in Japanese studies without prior knowledge of the Japanese language? Yeah, this is really important. I find students often have this misconception that they need to know some Japanese language before coming in or declaring the major, and that's not true. We welcome everybody. You are welcome to come in and start taking our introductory modules even without any Japanese language ability. So part of what you learn in this major is Japanese language training. So just come in if you're interested, or even if you're thinking about the major and you're not 100% certain yet, just sign up for Japanese language right away. You start in with the first module and then go from there. Yeah, so this major really is open to everybody. You don't need to have any kind of background knowledge or ability before coming in.
Yes, so for Japanese language, yeah, even if you have a faint interest, you're not sure, it is advisable that you sign up for your first semester. You can do Japanese language elementary 1, and you can actually decide later if you want to major. If you think that you don't want to, that still can be counted towards as one of your modules, as a I think non-essential modules that you can fulfill.
Yeah, and we also strongly recommend, even if you're just thinking about Japanese studies and you're not certain yet, in your first semester, sign up for JS1101E, which is our gateway module. And that gives you an introduction to everything that we do in the major. You get to see the types of things that we teach. And even if you decide not to major in Japanese, Japanese studies, that still counts towards your general education requirements. So it's a good idea to start with that module. And if you do decide to major, then that module is required, so you need to take it.
Yeah, about the Japanese popular culture, Deborah.
Okay, yeah. So what do you study in Japanese popular culture? That's an excellent question. And really, you can study anything. There are lots of different ways to approach the study of popular culture. The way that I approach it in my modules is based on analysis of text. So we look closely at visual analysis of manga and anime, also live action film. And we look at how those texts make meaning, how people understand them, how they address their audiences, how fans interact with them, how the various popular culture industries work. And it's not, I think students sometimes misunderstand and think that you're taking a class to learn how to be a fan or just kind of sit there and enjoy watching movies. It's not that at all. I mean, really, we're sort of looking behind the curtain at how popular culture is developed and how it works and how it addresses its audience and how it catches our attention. So the introductory module that I teach in popular culture is 2000 level, so it's open to anybody. You can even take it in your first year if you want to. I'll be offering it this coming semester. So do look for it. It's just called Popular Culture in Contemporary Japan. And we will be looking at live action film, manga, and anime, and learning how to do visual analysis, how to look in depth at these types of texts. And we'll be looking at the history of Japanese popular culture in the 20th century from the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, really when the pop culture that we enjoy today was being developed, and where do these genres come from, and how do they appeal to different types of audiences. If you have more questions about this module or you're thinking about this, then please do send me an email. And I also encourage students who are doing the honors track to think about writing an honors thesis on a popular culture topic. So say if you're a fan of a particular manga or anime, you can write an honors thesis in your 4th year on that thing. Okay, will I be able to have a taste of Japanese culture, tea ceremony, world of geisha, amazing Japanese food? Yes, absolutely. We have a tea ceremony club where students learn how to do tea ceremony. And in our department, we have a really nice culture room, which is a tatami room, where the tea ceremony club practices. So you can be in the actual proper space for doing that. And the tea ceremony club has relationships with a tea master in Japan, and often the tea master or his apprentices come to give lessons here in Japan. And there's also a Japanese Studies Society that runs all kinds of cultural activities that includes both traditional culture. There's under the umbrella organization, there's a koto club. You can learn to play the traditional instrument, the koto, or you can learn traditional dance. And they also engage with pop culture, manga and anime, or contemporary dance. Once a year, they do a Japanese culture night. And again, because of the pandemic situation, that may not be going on as usual this year, but usually once a year, they have a cultural exhibition. And anyone who is participating in the club takes part in that.
Can I major in Japanese studies without doing language modules? No. If you are going to be a major, you have to fulfill language requirements. You need to have some knowledge of language so that you know, when you go out to work and you tell yourself as a Japanese studies major, at least you can read some Japanese. Yeah. But if you're a minor, you need to, if you're a minor, you do 6 modules, and the minimum you need is just a 1 module from language modules. So what percentage of faculty are authentic Japanese? Wow. We have in Japanese studies department, we have Professor Amy Morita, who is a linguist. And then we have also a full-time teaching assistant, Itsuko Tanaka Sensei, whom all of you will probably get to be tutored under her for if you are doing JS 1101E. But for Japanese language, all your Japanese language are taken at the Center for Language Studies, and the Japanese language session there work very closely with us. All the Japanese language teachers are Japanese. Yeah, they're all Japanese.
Yeah, native speakers.
Yes.
Yeah, teaching language and teaching culture are different types of things, and they require different types of expertise. So the language teachers are native speakers, but those of us who teach Japanese culture, we teach in English so that it's open to anybody who doesn't have, even people who don't have background in Japanese language. And having expertise in a topic is not the same thing as just being from that country. It's a different type of skill.
These questions on a prerequisite is necessary for all Japanese studies modules. No, most of our modules don't have prerequisites. So if you have any questions on that, you can always write to us and ask us.
Yeah, the lower level modules that are in 2000, you can definitely take as an elective, and most of them don't have prerequisites. It's the upper level modules, especially the 4000 level modules, are limited to Japanese studies majors, but the lower level modules, 2,000 or 3,000 level, generally don't have prerequisites.
What are some of the more popular modules that Japanese students major take? Deborah? Deborah's module is very popular.
Well, it really depends on what you're interested in. We're what's called a multidisciplinary major. So that means that everybody who is teaching within the Department of Japanese Studies has a different region that they're, or a different area that they're an expert in. So I do popular culture, and I also do literary studies, and I teach a module in art history. So students who are interested in humanities and the arts, in literature, take my modules. But we also have other faculty like Professor Thang who do sociology. So students who are interested in sociology, anthropology will take a different set of modules. We have faculty who specialize in history, in business, in geography, in linguistics. So it really depends on what your personal interest is. And there's a lot of different tracks that you can take even within this department.
Yeah, to minor in Japanese studies, you should first take JS 1101E. So try to take that course to start with. And then, for example, you are thinking of minoring. You may want to minor or major in Japanese studies. So in your year one, it is advisable that you take JS 1101E and then you take the LAJ, the Japanese language elementary 1. If you do not have any prerequisites, if you do not have any experience in Japanese language. But if you already know some Japanese language because you have taken courses outside in Japanese language schools and so forth, you can go for a placement test, and then you can go for a higher level of Japanese language so that you can advance faster. Okay, the next one on I can't decide between Japanese, Chinese, and Malay studies. Any advice on how to decide? I speak all three fluently. Wow, that's great. So you are really the Asian studies kind of people that we are very interested in. I think what you can do is really look into the kind of modules offerings there are, because like Deborah said, that we do have different tracks in that sense, even though you are in Japanese studies, for example. So if you're interested in popular culture, you know, you can see that we have a few courses on that. And you can always, of course, if you want to do an honors, for example, with us, you can always do something that's comparative with Chinese or Malay studies. You know, comparative perspective and context is always very welcome.
Yeah, well, I think you should do Japanese studies. You're the best major. Yeah, so we are a small department, and so that means that you will get to know your instructors very well. And that is not like many other departments, including Chinese studies. And the students who major in Japanese studies take the required modules together as a cohort, and they become very close. And so each cohort really becomes a very close group of friends. And it's wonderful to see that every year. I think that's another big advantage of doing this as a major. I think that doesn't happen in other departments. But seriously, to give an honest answer, I think if you're choosing between several different majors like this, you can take the gateway modules in your first semester and see how they are. See which topics interest you the most, which faculty you feel you connect with. You don't need to declare a major at the beginning of your first year. You can take some time to take different modules and think about it.
I think we are running out of time soon, but there's this last question asking about graduates. What are some of the job opportunities are there for graduates? And I just want to flash to you this slide that our graduates do work in a diverse work environments, in business, in government, airlines, banking, in academies and entrepreneurship and so forth. Quite a lot of our graduates also get to go to apply to the JET program, the program that you can go and work in Japan as a teacher or as an English teacher or as to work in the international exchange department in the local government office as well. So there are plenty of opportunities, and one of my graduates just, I think a few of them are working in Twitter now. So
yeah,
it's
a misconception that Japanese studies is just something you major in for fun, and it's not very practical. And actually the opposite is true. Our students work very hard, and we have excellent job placement records. And our students do very, very well because they have these hard skills of Japanese language and knowledge about Japan. There are a lot of employers that are looking for these skills.
Yeah, so the current ambassador of Singapore to Japan, Peter Tan, is our graduate. And we have also quite a few of our graduates who are working in Japan now as well.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Thang and Professor Shamoon, for sparing your time and so candidly responding to questions from our freshmen. We really appreciate it, and we want to thank you once again. And freshmen, in case you have any further questions, you can always reach out to FASS Box 63 in case you have questions regarding Japanese studies which have not been responded to. We would definitely love to hear from you, and send us your questions and we will respond. Meanwhile, we are close to 3 p.m., so we are going to move on to the Malay Studies section. Before we introduce Professor Alatas, thank you once again, Professor Thang and Professor Shamoon. We'll see you again very, very soon, hopefully in person and not on Zoom. Thank you. See you soon.
Yes, and we look forward to see our students, new students. Thank you.
Thank you.